Explain like I'm 5. When a company gets bailed out with taxpayer money, why is it not owned by the public now? I get why a bailout can be important for the economy, but I don't get why the company just gets the money. Seems like taxpayer money essentially is buying the company to me, but they get nothing out of it. Edit. Whoa, I woke up to a lot of messages. Some context to my question is that I am not from the US myself, but I see bailout stuff in the news, and as I understand it, the idea of capitalism is understood that if you succeed then you make money, and if you fail you go bankrupt and fold or get bought out, hence me wondering why bailouts are essentially free money to a company to survive, which in my head sounds like it's not really fair because not all companies are offered that luxury. Why is it not owned by the public now? It depends on the type of bailout. It's often a loan, that must be paid back, or a purchase of shares, which the government later sells, hopefully at a profit. Very rarely is it no strings attached. Seems like taxpayer money essentially is buying the company to me, but they get nothing out of it. Inaccurate. For example, in 2008 under the TARP program, in addition to an emergency loan, the U.S. government bought $45 billion worth of preferred stock in Citigroup, a larger bailout than any other recipient in the $400 billion plus program. When the government sold its stake, they had made a $12 billion in profit on Citigroup. Part of an overall $15 billion in profit from the whole program. The most ELI5 answer is that it's a loan, not a purchase. The bank loaned me money for my house, but they don't own it, unless I stop paying. They are my creditors, not my owners. When you buy bonds of a company, you don't own part of the company, you own their debt. They simply owe you the money. They could be, and I believe it has happened in the past. But in general, the federal government doesn't want to run private companies. They aren't structured for it and don't necessarily have people with the right expertise. Even worse, they'd be competing against private companies and reducing the private employment figures. A better outcome would be for the company bailed out to pay back the money required to save it, with interest. Then to put federally mandated controls in place to prevent it from happening again. As opposed to stupidly deregulating the industry and virtually assuring that it will happen again. They do. The government is buying stocks, and then sells them later either back to the company or to a private investor. Most famously, the AIG bailout netted the US $22 billion in profits when they sold the stock. Also sometimes the bailouts come in the form of a loan which comes with interest payments back to the US, e.g. when they gave Chase the liquidity to buy WAMU, again a profitable activity. It depends on the country, but in the US, we generally frown on the government owning companies because a lot of people think they're incredibly bad at running them. Instead, we force the companies to pay back all the money we lent them, with interest. For example, the government made money off both the auto industry and 2008 financial bailouts, once it was all repaid. It just took a while. Example. TARP cost $426.40 billion in bailouts to banks. But they ended up repaying $441.70 billion in the end. The issue is that a lot of people, and they have a point, are upset that the bank's executives and employees continued to get bonuses and make money while they paid us back.